What's going on, guys? Joe here with Odyssey Off-Road. We got the WR450F out on the trail today, and I just came up this really chunky trail that I would have never done a few months ago. Come all the way up from the wash through this rocky, really chunky, rutted out trail, and then up here to this fire road, kind of, so to speak, double track. Still really chunky going out this way. I might explore a little bit more, but we'll save all that stuff for another video. Today, what I want to talk about is the WR450F versus WR250F. So if you're shopping for a WR, you've kind of narrowed it down to like, that's the bike you want. But you're not 100% sure if you want the 250 or the 450. Well, there's quite a few things that are the same, you know, that are on both bikes that you're going to get, and we'll go over some of that stuff. And then there's going to be obviously quite a bit of distinctual differences, you know, not cosmetically really, but you know, performance-wise. Obviously, one's a 450, one's a 250, but there's a little bit more to that. We'll talk about the characteristics of each, which one might be better for you, and then what you want to do, and your skill level. I will start off, preface this video by saying, I think if you're a newbie, like in other words, you've never ridden a dirt bike before, you're looking for your first dirt bike, you have zero experience on, say, like a sport quad or anything with a clutch, anything like that, and you're just looking to learn, these are not the bikes for you, okay? These are derivatives of the YZs. The only thing, you know, different, which we can talk about more in another video, is the tuning. So these are tuned down a little bit, but it's the same motor, same chassis, all that stuff as a YZ. So this is not type of bike you want if you want to learn how to ride a dirt bike, and you also have no experience on, say, like a 450 or a 700 or a big bore sport quad, and you want to get, you know, try out two wheels. These are not the bikes for you. Get a nice little air-cooled bike to learn on, KLX 230 or CRF 250F, something like that. But onto the WR. So what you're going to get on both bikes is you're going to get KYB suspension. They're going to look identical. Only one's going to say 450. You're not, some of the goodies I have on here, actually, I have different bars, wraparounds, the KYB decals I added, and the frame guards. That's all stuff I added. The rest of the bike is standard. I also added the tailpiece just to mount the license plate. You get a light, but there's nothing to put your plate on, so I added that piece. The WRs come with a fan. You get a cooling fan with WR, and that's nice if you're trail riding, you know. So you're gonna get a cooling fan, it's right there. Most bikes, four strokes, run hot, so you do need a cooling fan if you're gonna be out here and you're gonna do any type of technical, anything slower, where you not getting constant airflow. You're gonna notice you're gonna need the fan. The WRs both of them come corked up, what they call corked up. So in other words, you get a restrictor in the airbox, you get a restrictor in the tailpipe here, which is right here. A tiny little pea shooter in the middle. You'll see it's smaller than my pinky. It's hot, so I can't go too crazy, but you'll see it's smaller than I can't even get my pinky finger, and I don't have huge hands, so my pinky won't fit in that. That's very, very tiny, and that keeps it quiet and also significantly reduces the exhaust flow. We'll get into why you should leave that in here on the 450 until you can do some tuning in a bit. But they all come like that, and they will come typically with a restrictor screw in the throttle body, which you can remove, cut down, or put a shorter screw in. What the restrictor screw does is it gives you only about a third throttle. You get about that much. And once you put a regular size screw or cut that one down, you get full throttle. So a lot of times the dealers do that with the screw, and then they leave the rest of the bike corked up. Now we're talking to, guys, US and Canada models. This is specific to. If you guys are overseas and you start talking about tuning the bike, yada yada, these are US models and Canadian models. You can't tune these bikes, okay, without changing the ECU. We'll get into that. So just to kind of warn you guys that are about ready to, you know, start punching comments in about the de-restricting and tuning. You can't tune the US Canadian models. So now without changing the ECU. So I've had the 250F, and now I obviously have the 450F. I'll be honest with you, they're both awesome bikes. They both feel very similar on the trail. In terms of chassis, suspension chassis, all that stuff feels very similar. There's a little bit of a weight difference. The 450 is too wet, ready to ride, full tank of gas and oil in the engine. It's going to be 258 pounds. The WR250F is going to be 249 pounds. So it's a 9-pound difference from the 250 to the 450. Both considerably lighter than some of the other options on the market. They're both right there in the ballpark of, a 4-stroke off-road bike with a headlight and all that stuff. They're all right around that 250 pound mark. The only exception to that would be the Honda 450X. If you cross shopping a 450F WR to a Honda 450X, the Honda 450X is significantly heavier. It's like 279 pounds ready to ride. So, that's another 20 pounds extra of weight on that Honda than this bike here. So that bike's really more for open desert stuff. If it starts getting more technical on a stock bike, it's going to struggle. It's a little heavier and tends to flame out a little bit easier than these Yamahas do. So now in terms of transmissions, they're going to be different. They're both wide ratio transmissions, meaning from first to fifth, it's in the transmission on this 450, it's a very wide ratio. So first gear is very low, second gear is pretty low, third gear starts spreading out. Fourth and fifth are very high. Fifth gear is super tall. You can click it in fifth and cruise 60 miles an hour, no problem on this bike. Same thing with the WR250F. The difference is the WR250F has 6 speeds. So in the middle there, second, third, fourth, you're going to be doing a lot more shifting for a couple of reasons. One is not as much low-end power on the 250s. And there's 3 gears that are very close in ratio right there. So you're going to be clicking back and forth between them a lot more. Than on this bike, you can kind of chug second gear through the chunky stuff, or third gear even sometimes. Where the 250, I did find myself shifting a lot more between gears. So that's just something to consider. They're both wide ratio though, so don't be fooled by the 6-speed versus 5-speed. It's the 5 speeds is plenty. It's still a wide ratio transmission. It's not a close ratio transmission. To put it in perspective, my Husqvarna TE150 that I have at home in the garage is an enduro bike with a 6-speed. People automatically hear 6 speeds and they think they're going to have like this overdrive 6 gear and they're going to be able to, cruise high speeds just clicking it up into that extra gear. That's not what that means. Just because you have 6 speeds, you have a close ratio or a wide ratio transmissions. WRs are wide ratio, so they're spread out. You have a tall. The last gear is going to be really tall. On that TE150 I have, that 6th gear is still fairly short. So like cruising 50 miles an hour on that bike's screaming compared to 60, 65 on this bike in 5th gear. So that'll kind of put it in perspective a little bit for you. In terms of if you have like a lot of experience on a bike and you've ridden other bikes, I don't think the 450 is going to be intimidating. The thing is with the 450 is there's a lot more low end. Now we're talking bone stock bike, okay? I haven't tuned this thing or anything like that, so we're talking bone stock, still corked up. It's got the restrictor in the airbox, restrictor in the muffler. And the reason for that is because I had it de-restricted and it was running really hot, borderline overheating when you started getting slow. When you were going faster, it was fine because you had a lot of airflow through the radiator. But as soon as you slow down, the fan would kick on and it would almost never shut off. If you let it idle for more than a couple seconds after the fan was already on, it would want to almost borderline boil over. It would get to over 200 degrees. Right now, the way it is with it corked back up, the fan kicks on once in a while. Like right now, coming up this really chunky trail, fan kicked on, but then it shuts off. The bike never gets over 195. So it runs much cooler. You also can feel the difference in the heat coming off the bike with it unrestricted and the stock ECU. It was really hot. There was a lot of heat coming off the bike. So I re-restricted it. I have a competition ECU on order, which basically gives you the tuning ability of the YZ450F and the YZ450FX. Unfortunately, Yamaha has them on back order, and they've been on back order for months, and they're right now no end in sight to the back order. So we'll get it when we get it. I love the bike, so it is what it is. We'll just ride it stock for a while. Not like it's lacking power. It's just, sounds like a weed whacker with the stock muffler inserted. So, but the 450 versus the 250, again, the 450 power low end wise is a lot more. So to give you an example, on my WR250F, if I was going up like a really chunky trail and I wanted to get the snappiness out of the throttle, what I would do is I would click it up a gear high, and I would be able to give it a ton of extra. I'd be able to twist the throttle a lot, like give it a lot of throttle without running the risk of the bike getting squirrely or out of control, or being too herky jerky. The 450 is a different animal. You can still ride it like that, and that's obviously how I ride it when I get into the chunky stuff. You don't, keep the throttle tame down a little bit. I also have a G2 throttle tamer on the bike. I had it on the WR250F too. But with the 450, you have a lot more low end torque, so you can't, even riding up a gear, you can't give it as much throttle. It's going to take the jerkiness away, to be able to pick your way through some chunky section of trail. But like in the 250F, I could say like should have been maybe second gear to keep it in the power band, and I would ride it up in third, and then like be able to like turn and go up a hill a little bit. And to kind of keep it controlled, I would ride it up a gear a little bit and then just be able to give it a fistful of throttle, and it would just chug and pull its way up. With this bike, if you do that, you're going to be standing on the back wheel, because the torque on the bottom is there's a lot more of it, and you can't just give it a fistful of throttle like you can on the 250. The 250 has way less torque on the bottom. That's one of the complaints people have with the 250 motor, is they're not very torquey at the bottom. All the power is in the mid to high range. That motor is a screamer. Now, you don't have to ride it like that, but it will keep pulling and pulling and pulling as the RPMs go up. It's a lot of fun, that bike. That being said, though, I did a lot of stuff with that 250F. I did some single track with it, and I really, honestly, I think I rode that bike better than any other bike I've had so far. I'm getting that way here on this bike now. I'm really starting to get comfortable on it, but it takes a while. When you change bikes, you got to get comfortable on it, and what it can do, what it can't do, how to ride it, things like that. So, but you're gonna have a lot more bottom end on the 450F. If that's gonna freak you out, then get the 250. If you're riding mid RPMs, you're like a mid-paced guy, flowy stuff, the 250 is more than enough bike. It's very fast, it's very snappy, and it's got more than enough power for most conditions. The only time you're really going to need the 450, in all honesty, is if you're a guy, you're riding with a group, you guys do a lot of big hill climbs, you're going to want the 450 power to make it up those big hills. Other than that, the 250 really does everything well, really well. I was super happy with the 250F. I did not sell that bike because I wasn't happy with it. I sold it at the time because I had kind of gotten in over my head financially with the second bike I bought, and I just kind of didn't want to hang on to two expensive bikes. So I had sold it at the time. In hindsight, I should have just kept that bike and did what I did now, which is get a small, cheaper, small bore, 2-stroke to have as the second bike, which is what I originally started out doing. And then I went down this rabbit hole, yada, yada. You guys know the story if you follow the channel, but the WR250F was more than enough bike for me. I loved it. I rode it really well. It was a really, really good bike. This 450 is awesome too. I do a lot of long rides with it. I just did a 65-mile ride with the bike. It was awesome. So they're both really, really good bikes. They're both going to be really good, like build quality. Yamaha build quality is quite honestly second to none. I have had two Husqvarnas, and I know the KTM build quality is really good, and the parts they use is high end and all that stuff. But I'll be quite honest with you. I don't think the Yamaha takes a back seat in terms of build quality to those bikes. I know everybody raves about them and how good they are, and they are really good bikes. But the Yamaha build quality is really, really good. I've been nothing but pleased with the two that I've had so far. So I don't really think you can go wrong with either bike in terms of that. In terms of price, obviously the 250F is going to be a little bit cheaper. About $1,000 cheaper. So if you're really cost conscious, 250F is going to be the cheaper of the two, which makes sense, right? I will tell you though, if your eye is really on the 450 and you really want 450 power, but you're taking the 250 because of price and you're trying to save money, in the long run, you're going to end up spending the money twice. Take it from me, you know, just get the bike you want up front, pay the extra $1,000 if that's really the only deciding factor for you. Come up with that. You know, if you're spending 10 grand, spend 11 grand, you know, it's an extra $1,000. If you're financing it, it's like, you know, $5, $10 in your payment. So it's not that big a difference. Try and find a way to come up with that extra $1,000 to get the bigger bike if that's really what you want. But in all honesty, again, the 250 is really more than enough for most people, I would say. The 450 now, let's talk about, is the 450 too much power? It can be, you know, on the bottom, it could be a little bit, I'm not talking about like the jerkiness, like on-off throttle. Both bikes have that. So both bikes, and that's a 4-stroke thing. You know, when you're on the gas, off the gas, like that first roll in, the first tip in of the throttle, the bike's a little jerky, lurchy. And that's just the tuning characteristics of the 4-strokes. You can change that a little bit when you get the competition ECUs for these bikes, and you know, you add a bunch more fuel, take away some timing at the bottom, and it gets rid of a little bit of that. I haven't had the competition ECU on either of mine, but what I've done is I put a G2 throttle tamer on the bikes. This one's got it too. You'll see the throttle tube is red. So what it is the first roll on the cam where the cables go, the first roll in, it pulls the throttle cable, say for the first 30% of the throttle pull, a little bit easier. It's a smaller, the first section is a little bit smaller on the cam end of the throttle tube than the standard throttle tube. So when you first, and you'll be able to see that when you install the G2 throttle tamer, you're going to have a lot of slack in your throttle cable. You're going to have to back the adjuster out to take out a bunch of the slack. And that's because it's a lot smaller there on the bottom. So when you first tip into the throttle, you're not giving it as much gas right away, as much throttle, I should say, right away on the first third until you get to 40-50%. Then it's like the normal throttle tube. It's full, same ratio, like 1-to-1. But in the initial onset, the first 30-40%, it's like, you know, 2-to-1, 3-to-1 ratio. Whereas it takes a little bit of that lurchiness off the bottom. It's not completely gone, but it does help quite a bit. And it's not that expensive, the throttle tube for these. It's like $69, something like that. So well worth it, in my opinion. In terms of like the 450 being too powerful for you, I would say this. So if you're coming from dirt bike experience, like you've had other dirt bikes, you've had other motocross style bikes, you've ridden other 450s, this is going to feel tame to you, very tame for a 450. Now, if you're coming from a 250, you're going to feel a big difference in power. I would compare like a WR450F, corked up the way it is, restricted in the muffler, restricted in the airbox, to power-wise of like a 350 Austrian bike. It's similar to that. It's about 48 horsepower out of the box, like low 30s torque, 35 pounds-feet of torque, something like that. Whereas the motocross versions or an uncorked WR with the competition ECU, you're looking mid-50s horsepower. So it's a big difference, but it's a lot more than a 250. So if you're okay with not modifying the bike too, and you want something that's kind of in between the 250 and the 450, this is probably the perfect bike. If not, you know, one of the Austrian 350 bikes are really good. What I've seen though, and what I found is, I think these WRs are a little less flame out prone than the Austrian 4-strokes are, with the exception of like the FE 450. If you get a FE 450, that's kind of a tuned down 450 from Husqvarna as well, with the headlight. And that bike too seems to be really good, really trail friendly, very similar to this bike here. But in terms of power compared to another 450, this is going to be less out of the box until you uncork it and get the competition ECU. Then it really changes the bike, makes it a YZ450FX at that point is what you're going to have. So if that's what you're looking for, but you're looking for a bike with a headlight and all that stuff, then get the WR, wait for the competition ECU to come out. By the time some of you guys are watching this video, it might be out by now, you know, depending on when you're watching this. If you're watching this video 6 months, a year from after it was posted, then, you know, check with Yamaha, see if the competition ECU is in stock, and then it might be by then. Who knows? At this rate, God only knows, but it's been months, for months and months. We've been waiting for it. But, and we're right now, we're, you know, November 30th. It is today. We're November 28th today is, as we're recording this, of 2025. So I mean, that's it. I think you can't go wrong with both. They're both gorgeous bikes. They both look exactly the same if you're comparing the same year, 250 to 450. Again, this is a 25. My 25 250 looked exactly the same, only it said 250 on it. A couple other cosmetic differences is, you know, the design on the clutch cover, which you don't get on the 250. It's smooth. Everything else is the same. Airbox is up top on both bikes. It's all pretty much looks and built the same way. The WRs also have again, same chassis, same motor as the YZs. What they do is Yamaha updates the YZ450F first. That's the first bike that gets updates. The following year, those updates roll down to so like if the YZ450F, for example, in 2023 got a new frame and some motor updates. In 2024, the WR450F and the YZ450FX got those updates. So it's a year behind. So this is the same chassis that's in a 23, 24, and 25 YZ450F. Now in 2026, the YZ450F is getting some different updates. That'll roll down to the WR and the FX in 2027. And it's the same thing with the 250s. They do the same thing. The 250s are just a year behind the 450s typically. So that's how they roll those updates out. Just so you know, if you see updates come out on the YZ, typically a year later, those updates will be in the WR and the FX, just so you guys know. So it's same exact motor, same exact everything. The differences are always in just the gearing, you know, sprockets, flywheel effect. So, because you have a bigger stator on WRs, because you have to run the lights and the instrumentation cluster, speedometer and all that stuff, whereas the YZs don't have that stuff, so they have a smaller stator, a little less flywheel effect. And the ECUs are the major differences, and mufflers, they have different mufflers. So, but WR I like because it has a fan, has the lights, you know, and at some point you can make it a YZ fairly inexpensive. It comes with the communications box already in the unit, so it communicates with your phone. The only thing you can do right now, stock, before a competition ECU, is just update your traction control settings on map 1 and 2, and then you can get to your diagnostic pages or your gauge cluster pages to show you, you know, how engine temp, engine hours, all that stuff on here on the phone. But you can't do any mapping as far as tuning and fuel and ignition until you get to competition ECU. So that's it. That's kind of the major differences between the 250 and the 450 in terms of who's for what. Again, both bikes are not beginner friendly. If you've never ridden anything with a clutch, if you've never ridden a sport quad, if you have a ton of sport quad experience, you rode a sport quad your whole life and you want to give 2 wheels a try, I think WR250F or 450F would probably be fine if you have throttle and clutch control a little bit, and you know how to manage the power, and you're not stupid in your judgments of how to ride it, and think you're going to hop on it and ride it the way you do your quad. It's just not going to be the case. That's my background in sport quads, and hopping on dirt bikes was a huge transition for me. So in all honesty, I'd say get yourself a cheap air-cooled dirt bike to learn on, a TT Yamaha or a CRF 250F, air-cooled Honda or a KLX 230, something like that. Really docile bikes, really easy to maintain, and learn on those before you hop onto a motocross style bike for your first bike. WRs are just not beginner bikes. They're very snappy off the bottom. They both have a lot of power, and just, you know, different. Obviously, they come on different. You know, the 250s are very rev happy and snappy, and the 450s are like chuggers. A lot of torque at the bottom, a lot of low end mid range power. So that's it, guys. I would say again, newbies, stay away from WRs. Get yourself something air cooled. But if you have a little bit of experience, or if you have dirt bike background and you just want to get back into it, say you're looking at, you've already know you're getting a WR, you narrow it down between the two. I hope this video helps you. Again, 250 is going to fit most of you, in all honesty, and do almost everything you needed to. But if you're doing a lot of big hill climbs, riding a lot of deep sand, say maybe you want to take it to the dunes, the 450 might be the better choice there. So obviously the sand robs a lot of power. Not that you can on the 250, the 450 obviously make it a little bit easier for you. So that's my 2 cents, guys, from owning both of them. They're both awesome bikes. I don't think you can go wrong with either. But just be careful. Consider all the things I talked about already with what you are going to do with the bike. That should be your number one thing. What am I going to do with this bike? Who am I riding with? And what type of riding am I going to do? And then go from there. Hopefully this video helped you guys. If not, if there was something I missed, something you wanted to hear, or you had a question about, drop a comment below. I'd be more than happy to get that information for you if I can, or if I know the answer to you. I usually try to reply to almost everybody all the time, unless you're a knucklehead and you say something stupid. You know, sometimes there's a couple of yous out there that you know who yous are, but we just leave you hanging. We don't waste our breath answering this, but as 99.999% of yous are awesome in the comments. There's always a knucklehead or two out there though. So this is Joe with Odyssey Off-Road, and I hope you guys pick yourselves up a WR, get out on the trail, do some exploring. Especially if you live in a desert. They're great desert bikes. Really, really good desert bikes. I love it. It'll be on the channel for a while. And we are out. Catch you guys on the next one.